Welcome to another episode of the GYST. When it comes to life, love, and the pursuit of happiness, sometimes we just need a moment to get our shit together. So that's why we're here. So I'm your host, Kay, and I have my co-host here, Stephanie and Val. And today, they lifted the mask mandate in Philly. So that made me think about the residue of the pandemic. So over the last year and a half, almost 2 years, what did we learn? What are we doing differently? What did we change? What are the things we never did before until this pandemic hit? What got on our nerves? What are we happy about? All of that stuff we're going to talk about tonight on the GYST, which is all the residue of the pandemic. What did we learn? Let's start there. What is the most important thing we learned in the last year and a half as a result of being indoors, locked down, wearing masks 24/7, all of that stuff? What did we learn about ourselves?
Well, I learned a lot. It's very profound, and very introspective. And I learned that my feet go flat from wearing flip-flops for a year.
Wow. Okay. I wasn't expecting that, but listen, that's a big deal.
Oh,
that's real. That's a big deal.
So it's a process of pushing them back where they were so I can fit my shoes. Because they did spread.
Oh, wow. So now are you back in shoes now?
No.
Okay.
So they're still not pushed back per se. They're still not pushed back.
About once a week. About once a week, we go through the process of jamming them into a shoe. And,
Sure, yeah.
And then hobbling around for a couple hours.
What I will say, Stephanie, is you never fail us. No matter what the topic is.
Wow.
You never let us down. You never.
I was not expecting that.
Nobody else's feet spread during the pandemic.
I hadn't noticed, but now I'm going to pay attention to that because I don't think I was really wearing, and I wear flip-flops in the house. I do. But I don't think I was wearing them enough to notice if it made a difference when I put my shoes on.
See, I wore them pretty much around the clock, winter, spring, fall, unless I was out, like in the winter, if I'm out somewhere, I would put on like a little boot or something, but it wasn't anything like going into work not those kind of boots.
Oh, all right, fair enough. So that's what you learned.
Well, no, that was just, what came to my head first.
So
my shoes don't
That
fit.
was an observation.
Yeah.
That was right. Okay, I got it. Val, what'd you learn? Something you learned.
All right, so so what I learned was it's great not having people breathe on you because I haven't had a cold in a year. Seriously, I have not had a cold in a year. My 4-year-old hasn't really had a cold in like a year because the benefits, all this mask wearing and all this extra cleansing and hygiene that was going on meant you weren't getting other things. I mean, as a 4-year-old, she's in school, so she's bringing something home every week. She didn't have that. Right. The other thing I learned is that I really appreciate daycare and I will pay any amount for it because those 4 months that their daycare was closed and she was home with me was exhausting. Trying to work at home and take care of her and keep her entertained. I mean, she was on every meeting, every Zoom meeting I had. So there's not anybody in the state who doesn't know Casey. So what I learned is I'll almost pay anything for daycare because that's a valuable thing. But yeah, I think the main thing I learned is, like, again, and I think we all thought we were, I won't say thought we were clean. We all wash our hands. Okay, no, so not everybody, but the three of us. So the three of us were washing our hands, doing all of that stuff. And in Delaware, as a matter of fact, where I live, the governor announced that the state of emergency is being lifted as of July 13th, and the reason he has to announce it 30 days ahead of time is because work with the state because we disseminate all of the statewide benefits, and we had a myriad of benefits that came into play as a result of the pandemic. So we have to have 30 days out to discontinue those pandemic benefits. So we know that our state of emergency is going to end on July 13th. But in Delaware, wearing masks in most establishments is not really required as long as you're fully vaccinated. And obviously people can continue to wear them if they want to. But I think with all of the different businesses, just all of this extra stuff they were doing, and I'm not suggesting they weren't doing things that at least they were required to do originally, but all of this extra stuff that's been put in place as a result of the pandemic has just resulted in those lower totals of people being sick from other things that were pretty normal, like the flu and colds and other viruses. I mean, those totals are just a lot lower as a result of the pandemic. So that's what I learned.
Right.
I did not notice my feet spreading. I did not.
Right.
A lot of people I didn't realize how many people don't know or don't practice good hygiene. I really didn't know it was such a phenomenon that you need to wash your hands when you come in the house.
But we're creatures of habit. So
Right.
people believe that if I'm inside my house, I don't need all of that. I don't need to do those habits that I need to do outside. If you were a fly on the wall or a camera in most people's houses, a lot of people don't even wash their hands after they go to the bathroom.
Okay.
I mean, you see that. So people have habits that
are nasty.
Nasty, pretty much.
Let's just call it what it is.
Yep. We can call it that, sure. That's awesome. We can call it that.
Nasty. They're nasty. And for whatever reason, they made a decision that said, yeah, washing my hands ain't for me. Okay. So
or maybe not.
As adults, you able to make your own decisions. And here we are. So
right.
I think that for me, what I learned is how to entertain myself. So
Yes.
I'm moving just in general in life and work. I'm moving 24/7. You all know that. I am always in it. Pandemic hit and it was like, ooh, it's just me here. What do I do? What do I do? And so I had to learn to entertain myself and create a daily ritual of things to do. And I like to create different stuff. And I can't even tell you all the stuff I created that probably will go nowhere because it's way too much of it. But in that time, it just gave me more free. I had to learn how to just entertain myself. I can't tell you how many shows I watched on Netflix, how much binge watching I did, and just learning how to create different.
Oh, we lost her completely.
Oh, wow.
So can you still hear me, Val?
I can still hear you. I'm just wondering,
okay.
It does still say we're live. I was wondering, does the show shut down because the primary host anchor went out?
Okay,
she's coming back.
Okay, so we went wrong.
We've already continued. We moved on to a whole different subject.
Right. So now we're talking about Barbie. No,
yeah, that's Barbie.
So I had to learn how to entertain myself. So what were the challenges? Okay, so we're home, we're in this house. What were the real challenges for you during the pandemic? What were the challenges?
For me, it was boredom because I am used to, I'm half homebody, half have to be out. I walk that line, I straddle it. You know what I mean? So I'm okay with being in the house, but when I want to be out, I want to be out. And the boredom of it being a certain night and like, wow, I wish I was at the movies. I wish I were at a concert. I wish I was out to dinner with friends. I wish I would that. And it was hard last summer because I love summertime, and all of the outdoor things that go on. And there was none of that. So that was hard.
Now, How free do
Right.
you feel right now? So all of those things that you missed last summer, how free do you feel? You feel comfortable going to a concert now?
Absolutely.
You feel comfortable going to the movie theater?
No. But I'm gonna tell you something. But wait a minute. I thought movies were nasty before the pandemic. So it's not like this is. I'm the one that will come to the theater with a blanket and put the blanket on the chair.
Listen,
that was me.
That kind of freaks me out in the movie because it's dark and you can't really see what's on the chairs. You can't really see what's there. So I get it. I totally get that. But so you feel comfortable enough to go in stores, no mask. You've been vaccinated, no mask. You feel comfortable with all that. What about you, Beth?
So, first of all, I just want to go back for a second and say, obviously, what I've learned is my two friends here are germaphobes because Stephanie taking a blanket to the movie theater. But I think that the challenge for me was distinction. I mean, other than just being out, just there being some separation in my day. Because I've worked from home, so I didn't have a gap in working. But before, I would get up in the morning, go to work, and then once I left work, work was done for the day. And now there was really no distinction. So I found myself kind of working all day, even on weekends. And then, of course, that not being able to go places you wanted to go. Like we missed out on going to our annual vacation that we go on as a family to Hilton Head. We didn't do that last year. We didn't even do it this year, at least not at our regular time, but we are actually going in September. But so those things, those annual things that I would look forward to and just being able to, and I'm kind of like Steph, I'm a homebody. I don't mind being home. I don't mind entertaining myself, or not really myself because I'm here with a family. So if we decide to have movie night, that's something we do. But that thing where, okay, one Friday we might decide, okay, we want to go out to dinner. We want to go to the movies.
Right.
And we couldn't do that. So that was a big challenge for me. That and just not that distinction between your day, between work being over and your personal life starting. That was the challenge for me.
So when it comes to, so let's chat about that for a second. So for like living by yourself, I had those living by myself. I had those moments where I thought, wow, if I had someone here, would that have made it better? Like if I had a mate, or I had a husband, or I had, boyfriend or whatever here, would that have made things different? Were those moments, did you feel those moments during the pandemic? Or for you, Val, who has a family there, did you feel those moments where you were in there too long all together and you wanted everybody gone?
So I didn't.
Everybody gone.
Right. So I didn't really have that because my husband, even though I was working at home, my husband was still going to work every day. So it wasn't a situation where he wasn't going into work. So he still went to work every day. I really only had that 3 or 4 months because my son in college, his college shut down. So all his classes were online. So he was home with me. The little one was home with me. So I had them home with me, but I didn't have everybody. So yeah, there were some days where I was like, okay, I kind of wish these two could go somewhere because they're just here with me. But I didn't really have the situation where everybody's here looking at each other like, what do we do? Because we all had something to do. I was working. My son would be in his room online doing his classes. And between the two of us, we were entertaining the 4-year-old for the 4 months that she was home. But my husband went to work every day. So there was no, so yeah, but I mean, it was nice to have other people in the house, but I'm not going to say there weren't times where I might have wanted them out the house, but it really didn't have anything to do with the pandemic and, us just being on top of each other. Most of the time it was, okay, I really am still in my work day, so I could use a little more quiet than I'm getting. So
Right.
I didn't have it that way. It wasn't, like some of the stories you hear where, okay, we're both here looking at each other. What do we do? I didn't have that.
Right. What about you, Steph?
Well, I was actually dating for most of the pandemic. So I was in a relationship for most. So, but like we don't live together or anything like that. So we would still see each other, but it's still, again, accustomed to going and doing things. Like, I may be in the house Monday through Friday, but a lot of times on Friday nights or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I was out and about and I would do stuff and I would visit with family and friends and we would go. So there was still and we would try to do little things to, do a movie night, make it fun, do game night, it just was, it's one thing to be home because you want to be home. Another thing to be home because nothing is open and you can't go out. But when you do go out, it's so artificial. You don't want to touch people. You're staying away from folks. It was just this kind of odd way that humans don't interact. So
I'm gonna pause to deal with the elephant in the room. With both of you all having dogs, whose dog is that barking? Nobody.
It would be mine.
That?
Yeah,
it would be mine. Because again, because I'm not saying it's not. Right? No, because I live with a family, obviously, and what's happened is someone has arrived at home downstairs, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, even though I'm not showing it on my face, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, would they come on in the house already so the dogs stop barking? Because they basically, once they hear the garage open, they bark until whoever's out there comes in. Right. And I know it's my husband because he takes forever to come in the house. I don't know what he's out there doing. Like, would you come in the house already? What are you doing in the car? What are you doing? So yeah, he's gonna bark until this will probably take us up to minute 18. It's gonna take us up to minute 18. And I'm good at ignoring it. So, but since you brought it up, yeah, that's my dog, and he's literally 2 stories downstairs and loud.
I just wanted to ask the question because it was happening and we all were going on like it was not happening, and I thought, well, maybe they'll just bark for a minute and then they'll stop. But when it did not stop, I'm like, I'm gonna have to ask the question.
That's because, and listen, he's still barking because he still has not come in the house. What are you out there doing? Would you come in the house already?
So Robin, who chimed in on Facebook, says if your relationship was good prior to the pandemic, it probably got better. However, if your relationship was rocky before the pandemic, in all likelihood, it probably would get worse. Do you agree? If it was great before the pandemic, probably got better.
I think you could make an argument for it. Sure, it without anecdotal evidence for someone telling me that happened. I don't know. As I said, with me and my husband, I mean, we're good, but again, we weren't sitting here looking at each other because I was working from home, but he was still going to work. So I get where she's coming from. It absolutely makes sense. I mean, if you were good and you had a way of communicating and even communicating to the point like, listen, we're here looking at each other. Why don't you just go upstairs? I'll stay down here. Like if you have a good relationship, you can have that communication and still say, I'm not interested in looking at you 24/7, but I still love you. So I think if you have a way to do that, if you have a good relationship, then yeah, there might be an element of that says, okay, it's even better because now it's just even improved on your communication. But if you had a relationship that was kind of rocky, you're thinking, I don't know if this is for me. The more time you spend together could let you know what, this isn't the relationship with me. Or, I don't know, you might find a way to communicate that says you do belong together. So but now, I think there's an argument to be made for both.
Now, I'm kind of thinking with what she said, I'm kind of thinking, all right, so if it was great, sometimes your relationship is great because you do have that separation.
Right.
But then you come together and now we really finding out all those idiosyncrasies, all those little things that we may or may not have noticed because there was some separation in our relationship with people going in different directions and doing different things. Now, boom, everybody's under one roof. Everybody's in, and now you're like, oh, I didn't know that you shave your nose hairs. Like, really? Do you do
Right.
that? I didn't. I never
Right.
really noticed that.
Right.
And now we got an issue. Oh, now
Yeah.
we got
And
an
since
issue.
and since you took your shower an hour earlier, I didn't know that you left the bath mat so wet. And now it's wet. And I don't like that.
No, this
So
is
I don't know
what
if
I'm saying.
mine was a function of the pandemic or not. I don't know if mine was a function of the pandemic. I think the relationship was at a point where I really got to know the person who I was dating and realized I didn't like that person.
This is what I'm saying. But before
So-
that, you were
But
cool.
are you sure that
No,
wasn't a
not
function
really.
of the pandemic? Because the pandemic gave you more time to get to know them.
I don't think, well, we were not really together more than we were together before. I think it was
Okay.
just the stage of where we were. You know what I mean?
Okay.
How a relationship
Sure.
develops. I think it was just at the time. I think, if anything, I think the pandemic made me stay in it longer than I would have.
Really?
I think a little bit, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Now, why is that? So I'm interested in hearing why that is, because that would be a good reason to say get out because you might have COVID.
Yeah.
You know
Well,
what I'm
we
saying?
didn't live together. We didn't live together. We didn't quasi. But I think it was kind of like, well, you know, things are kind of goofy because everybody is in this weird state of existing abnormally. And like I said, what I finally came to the conclusion was the person who I thought I was dating, I had made that person up to be. That really wasn't who he was at his core.
Okay.
And it became abundantly clear. And I was just like, that's all right. You know, we're good.
Yeah.
So I think the timing of the pandemic, it was just the timing of it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
because I thought a lot about, relationships during the pandemic. I thought a lot about like, wow, people who are single and live by themselves and you're just kind of in here. And while you could talk to people on the phone, there's no live human connection in there. And then as soon as I think of that, I think to myself, gosh, if we were in here all day, 24 hours a day, I'd be like,
Right.
would I be going crazy?
Right.
So I thought a lot about that relationship wise in the pandemic, being single and some challenges that I heard from other people and other friends about how challenging or their relationship took a turn for the better, like Robin said, or took a turn for the worse.
Right.
As a result of being in these spaces, in these four walls for all this time, and people really getting to know who they're living with. Because sometimes we can know people and we can, how they say, you don't know somebody until you actually live with them. But sometimes we miss a lot because even when you get married and you're living under the same house, you can still miss a lot because people are getting up and doing their routine every day. They go to work, they get up, they shower, they, go to work and you separate. There's stuff you might miss in your relationship until you are together for a long period of time. And you will see things that you may or may not have seen before.
But
And I would think the pandemic would exacerbate that and speed it up. So like Steph, when you were talking about, you think the pandemic caused you to stay in the relationship longer than you would have because you recognize that, okay, this is just kind of a weird space. This is somebody relatively new, so let me give it a minute. But I think for people who are already in relationships, it might speed that up. Like, oh, wait, I thought I knew you. Turns out I don't. I'm out. My excuse is you might have COVID. So I would think the pandemic might have.
What you say? I think you may have COVID. So I'm gonna need you to go.
So I would think the pandemic might speed that, might speed that up and the getting to know you process. Like you said, there's you spend a lot more time together. And, you mentioned something earlier when you talked about, even though you're single and you might be home alone, but you can talk on the phone. But you think about technology really over the last few years hasn't really lended itself to people talking on the phone. So how did people really transition to trying to talk on the phone again? Because what we were doing is texting and talking on Facebook and Instagram and all the social media. And now to like get on the phone and have a live conversation. Because see, texting, I can send a text and that's it. I'm done. But a live conversation, so you got to imagine that might have been a little difficult.
We needed some human connection somewhere, somehow.
Yeah.
And so we reverted back to the old school of actually picking up the phone and calling someone and hearing their voice. And listen, my sister, Delphine, chimed in and she's like, I probably would have caught a case by now if somebody was living in my house. She's like, I might have caught a case by now. I'm just saying, it took a toll on a lot of relationships, good, bad, and ugly, and different. Yeah. It took a toll on a lot of relationships. And that's a lesson learned for a lot of us who are in relationships or not in relationships, that it's important to know who you're living with or who you're dating or it's important to know, and not just know, but pay attention, because we'd be moving so fast. We're not really paying attention to a lot of things.
But I think you think you are. In most situations, you think you are.
Right. You think you are, but you're not.
You're really
not. Until something like this happens. Right. Until something like this happens that forces you to do it. So the question is, how do you force yourself to do that outside of a pandemic?
Right. The other thing COVID did is it made me take a different look at things. You know, when you're watching the evening news, I'm not going to go get depressing, but when you're watching the evening news during a pandemic, right, it gives you a different perspective on life. Like, you know what? I'm not wasting my time on this, this, or this. When we come out of this pandemic, I'm not going to complain about having to go to a family dinner. I'm not going to complain about, you know, any of those kind of things, those relationships. I was so happy to see my sister. I almost jumped in her arms when I got over to her house.
God. Yeah, you know? it was crazy.
So I don't take any of that stuff for granted anymore. None of it.
And that's one of the things that, you know, I want to talk about real quick too, is that what will you do differently as a result? Like you said, you know, we now wrap our arms around our loved ones more now because of this happening and this experience. We see things differently now. We see our relationships, not just our intimate relationships, but the relationships with our families, because a lot of people didn't see their families, their parents, their, you know, their kids if they lived somewhere else. People could not even put their hands on them for a year or more.
Right.
And so who would have thought that would have ever happened? And now here we are. You know, mandates are being lifted, masks are coming off. People are feeling a little bit normal, but still skeptical. Still skeptical at the same time. Why? Because while we might be doing what we feel is the right thing, our trust level with everybody else doing the right thing is still at risk. You know what I mean? It's still at risk. So you walk in some stores and you see people still wearing a mask because guess what? They realize everybody didn't get vaccinated. Everybody, and like in watching the news and finding out more information, you're just like, ooh, can we get it again? If you've been vaccinated, you start thinking all of these things. And so the residue of what that leaves behind is like there's joy and then there's fear. There's joy and then there's fear all at the same time. So what have you, something that you've done, like while I was here, I learned to do something that, you know, I do once in a while, but I never got into it the way I did, which was recipes and cooking and finding different things and learning how to make different meals. And meal prep was a big thing for me, because one of the things I struggle with is I will go through my day and I'm going. And then I look up and I'm like, gosh, I'm tired. Why am I so tired? Because I haven't eaten anything. But meal prep helps with that, because you can get up in the morning and if your meals are prepared and they're in containers, you just go to the refrigerator, you grab, and you always have something. So that's one of the most important things that I learned to do differently as a result of the pandemic. What about you all?
Val.
I don't, it's funny you brought up the eating thing, and I'll be really quick because I found, I mean, obviously I prepare meals because I have a family, so I do a lot of the cooking, but what I found is I was worse at eating regular meals because I was home, and I'm always thinking, oh, let me go, I'll do a few things and I'll eat in a minute. Next thing I know, it's 1 o'clock and I haven't eaten. So that was something I really had to work on. I mean, as far as what I've done differently in the pandemic, I don't know. I can't really put my finger on anything I've done differently other than, like really appreciate the people in my life. I mean, because you always think you do that, but you don't realize you're not doing that until you go through this period of time where, like you said, you just can't talk to people, and you will not talk to me, but you can't see people. So, I think for me, one of the things, okay, I'll say this. One of the things I've done differently is before I would always think, oh, I'll call so-and-so later. I'll call so-and-so later. When I think about people, I really call them in the moment, unless I'm doing something else. I call them in the moment. And I've done that with a lot of people. There are people that have heard from me that I go to church with, I probably hadn't talked to in like a year. And like, I just thought of them on a Saturday driving back from somewhere, and I just called. So that's one thing I've done differently. I really do just call people in the moment as soon as I think about them. I don't think, oh, I wonder how so-and-so is. I'll call them next week. Because you don't know.
Or you answer the phone. You answer the phone now.
Right.
I answer the phone.
Oh,
that is another thing. Because I was notorious for not answering the phone. Like, I'll call them back and don't get to call them back.
Right.
Yeah, I do.
Answer the phone.
Yep, that's what I've done.
That is one important thing. That is one important thing. One, definitely answer the phone. Because we get so used to doing exactly what you said. We see it and we look at it and we're like, yeah, I'll get back to them. Yeah, right. Answer the phone. Answer the phone.
Yep. So I started taking, I take walks, and I love it. I pick different places. There are trails near me. So I take walks on the trails. I take the dog. We do a trail. We walk all of these different places. And it's just a peaceful, quiet time. And I love it. I never could find time to do it before. And working from home, there's time.
Yeah. Right. So I'm just glad that, today marks the day in our area where the masks come off and people are feeling some sense of normalcy. And I'm so glad. I am excited about that. I am, because it's just that little bit of feeling normal again, or what we perceive as normal. And of course, things will always be different. And the world constantly is changing. But I am really glad that we are moving towards that place, because those masks, oh my God, I don't care how cute they were, how fancy they were, how colorful they were a pain in the ass.
I hated it. They
were a pain in the ass.
I hated it.
It was like, what? And then, when we first went back to the office, everybody had on masks. You like, huh? I can't hear you. Huh? What you say, huh?
Girl, listen, I got new employees. I'm not even sure what they look like, because they got hired during the pandemic. I have no clue what they look like.
Yes. So I'm really excited about that. And I just wanted us to have a conversation about the residue, what we learned, what changed, what we're doing differently, because, we back in the game now. Back in the game. And we coming back better and stronger as a result of, living the last year and a half with masks behind, our smiles behind these masks and ourselves behind these doors. So I'm glad we have the opportunity to get back out.
I love it.
Cool. Yes. Thank you all for joining the GYST one more time when it comes to life, love, and the pursuit of happiness. Sometimes you just need a moment to get your shit together, and so do we. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all next time.
Bye.